Society today has decided to redefine the family in more ways than one, and we're going to be discovering over the next few weeks by calling a family meeting, what exactly does God say about the family, and how does it teach us about the Lord? Welcome to the 167.
1, 2, 3, let's go!
Welcome back to the 167. I'm Carissa. I'm hosting this week's episode. I'm joined by Pastor Lucas.
Yo.
And Megan.
Good morning, everybody.
And it's a rainy day here in Gardner this morning, but it's feels like October.
I love it. I'm here for it. The twilight vibes, like, so good.
Yes, Pacific Northwest vibes. So we are here starting a new series discussion this morning. It is, again, morning when we're recording. Maybe not when you're watching, but that's okay. Pastor Lucas kicked off our new series this past Sunday. Mm-hmm. It's called Family Meeting. So if you missed that, be sure to check back in with the sermon from Sunday, because you were setting up kind of the premise for the next couple of weeks that we're going to be getting into the idea of we're having a family meeting. New life. We're having a family meeting.
Which, speaking of meeting, we are meeting more and more of you that listen to the podcast.
Yes.
In all of the places.
So it's been really fun ever since I hosted last time and was like, nobody tells me that they listen to the podcast. So many of you have told me specifically that you listen to the podcast. So thank you. We wanted to shout out
Mandy Bannister,
who literally walked up to us on the soccer field on Saturday at our daughter's last game. And
as
she
her
was
daughter
like,
was crushing our daughter in soccer.
So congratulations on your W to your daughter's team. You beat our daughter's team. They had a tragic season, actually. The Shooting Stars.
We are just there for exercise and the power of friendship.
Friends and fun. That's why we do rec league soccer. But actually, our youngest was she wants to quit soccer because they won 0 games this season. So
thanks a lot, Mandy. I'm kidding. Don't do it.
Shout out to Mandy Bannister. Thanks for telling us that you watched the podcast.
Coach Ryan.
And congratulations to your team. Yeah, congratulations to your team on your victory. But yeah, it's been really fun. So many people have been like, I listened to the podcast. I wanted to tell you and not Lucas. I was like, thank you.
But I'm always right there.
But it is true. It is true. So that's been a fun thing. I hope, Megan, are people telling you that they listen to the podcast?
I've gotten nothing.
Listen,
now we got to tell Megan.
Everybody come to me.
If you see Megan,
Tell
her,
Megan. Tell Megan that you love the podcast.
I need the love.
Tell her your full and legal name, and then have her write it down.
We'll give you a shout out on the podcast. So yeah, it has been fun. I do enjoy it. So you all are great.
My reaction always, though, when people are like, I listen to podcasts, I'm like, really?
Why?
I don't know.
Why is that
I read the
surprising
stats
to
every
you?
year. Like, we have good stats about how many downloads and stuff that we have, but I'm always like, you guys listen to the podcast? I'm like, I figured it was just like 5 of my closest buddies and some dude in Pakistan.
Your dad.
Yeah.
Some dude in Pakistan.
We get downloads all over.
I know. There's always weird stats on that stuff. Okay, so with all of that said, tell us, what is the family meeting series about, Lucas?
Basically, the idea is that we're calling a family meeting. It's when families would, have a problem, they'd come together and try and solve it. We'd address an ongoing issue. And really what we're seeing in culture, of course, is the degradation of family and really kind of just I would say, dilution of it. The ideas and concepts, to the point where now as a society, we're arguing over the definition of words that people have known for 8,000 years.
Right.
It's like, I mean, it's crazy where, it's like, well, I even think of the guy that's like, who is my brother? It's like we really don't know. Mm-hmm. And like, what does it mean to be a mother or a father, or what does it mean to have a family? And I think it's unorthodox in some cases, but we're losing the ties that bind us. And so we're going to try and return to kind of a biblical model and find out what actually is fungible in that terminology. What is something that God has said, this is actually what this is. This is what it means to be a mother, a father, a child, a brother or sister, husband, wife.
So fun little sidebar is that after the sermon on Sunday, we were thinking about what to talk about today on the podcast. I said to Lucas, like, what are the good examples of families in the Bible? There are not a lot.
Very few.
Like, very few examples of families that had no dysfunction.
Yeah.
Right? Like, even the, we all know some of those stories, but like the top,
Basically-
like the most famous people in the Bible had kind of dysfunctional families.
Basically, if you did not have a dysfunctional family, it wasn't worth noting.
Right? They didn't write it down.
And so had a really healthy marriage. Like, it was always, it's like they're talking, which I think is fair in the culture now, where it's like, if you have somebody, if there's a pastor that lives his life, raises his kids are great,
Yeah, has a very quote unquote normal
yeah.
family.
My dad had 2 boys, raised them. Has always been married to my mother.
Right.
Like, we have a very traditional family. Nobody knows who he is.
Right, sure.
Does
yeah.
not get a chapter in history.
Yes.
But very
Yeah.
pivotal for my life.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that is really interesting, because we were going through, I even like Googled it, and the AI on Google was like, here are some examples, and I was like, no.
It's like Abraham
Did
and Sarah.
you even read the Bible, Chat GPT? Come on.
Abraham and Sarah did this, and I'm like, yeah. He also said that his wife was his sister, and
And then he slept with her
handmaiden,
handmaiden.
and he's got a whole
right?
other kid.
Yeah.
It says something about Isaac and Rebecca, and I was like, I mean, their marriage started out good, but like, I wouldn't say they were model parents, right? They each picked a favorite kid, and then that caused havoc, right?
Yeah, but
Two
don't we all
separate
have
nations.
a favorite kid?
But I do think that this is good, not necessarily good, but it does show us, at least for humans, like, for me at least, whenever I become a parent, just that not everybody had it together in scripture. It's
so
kind of
true.
encouraging,
It's so true, yeah.
although like there isn't a lot of them, there are a few that we can look at, but also like, I find it like comforting when I try to preach and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And Moses was like, God, I can't do that. Right. Like, so
I don't know how to talk to people.
right. Exactly. So it is comforting, although it is very hard to find, which maybe says something about it. So.
Oh yeah, it's like trying to find somebody who's sinless in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Not gonna happen.
Doesn't happen. Doesn't
Well,
happen.
And I always challenge people. I said that in my sermon, where people were like, polygamy's not outlawed in the Old Testament, and I'm going, yeah, but it never works out well.
Never.
Like, you could
Never a good
Rachel
idea.
and Leah, Hagar and Sarah. I'm like, you just pick it.
Right.
It's like you said, it creates rival nations.
Yes, for sure.
That later on like war
Yeah.
and kill thousands of people.
Right.
That's crazy. Yeah.
It's wild. It's wild. Okay, so go back to the concept of family meeting. Did either of you like actually have this experience growing up? Did your parents ever like call a family meeting? And that reaction tells me yes.
Yes, but see, ours were like, I loved family meetings. I guess I would have loved them because I always was the peacemaker in our family.
Sure.
Still am, I feel like. And so I was always like, yes, let's get on the same page. Let's do this. Like, hurrah. But they never were like that.
Sure.
Right? We'd come into the living room, talk about something, and my dad would be like, this is how it is. This is what's going on. My mom would be like, I just feel this way and I don't know how to do that. And then my sister's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be here. And my older brother's like just so zoned out. And then I'm just like, what is going on?
Yeah.
So nothing was ever really functional in our quote family
Sure.
meetings. So I always hated them and nothing ever good came from them.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yep. I do
Lucas?
love my family though. I will say that. Family meetings were not good.
I
Family
always
is
forget
awesome.
you have an older brother.
Yep. Yeah.
Always.
Okay. What about you?
We didn't necessarily like family meeting was like wait till your father gets home. And then dad got home and we all convened in the living room. But we didn't, it wasn't like the Dan Taylor calling a family meeting and we all rushed down, what's going on, mom? And sat on the, like, we pretty much handled it. My parents were like, they handled us in real time.
In the moment.
Yeah. So like we were that family that like you were scared to go to the bathroom in public because like that's where the spanking happened.
Oh,
I was like, what?
I was like, what are you talking about?
It was not like if we were at the mall and we were misbehaving, it wasn't like later on we're going to call a family meeting. It was, do you need to go to the bathroom? And we were like, no. And so sometimes that backfired. Like sometimes I remember my mom actually asking me, "Is like, do you need to go to the bathroom?" And I was screwing around and she didn't know. And I was like, "No, I don't need to go to the bathroom." She's like, "I'm actually asking you if you need to go to the bathroom." And I'm
use
like,
the bathroom.
"Oh yeah, probably," because I just wet my pants a little bit. I was so scared. But like they were pretty much in the moment people. But there were a couple times we had family pizza night for a while when we were teenagers. We tried on Friday night we would order pizza and play this game called Pepper. And so we would try and play cards before we all went our separate ways. That was the closest thing, I think. And then we would talk, of course, during that. I think that was the closest thing we had to a family meeting.
That's good. We've talked about before. My family's very conflict avoidant, so this concept of like having a family meeting was not ever something that I grew up doing at all.
Your family would be like, family meeting. How's the weather today? Well, it's sunny with a 65. Well, great meeting, everybody.
Right.
Let's look at a map together.
Yeah, so there was definitely not, I don't know, also not a lot of like need for conflict really in my family. But no, there was not direct addressing of anything ever. So it's interesting trying to figure out how we do that with our own kids. We're down to, well, you said Friday nights, you used to have pizza night with your parents. We're down to about once a week. We have all
dinner.
of us together for dinner, all 6 of us. And so that has been it's interesting just to see how your family like evolves, and our kids have so many things going on and we have things going on.
Sometimes for all of us to have dinner together, we have to go to Culver's because Vivian's working.
It's true.
Do what you got to do, you know?
Yeah. So this concept of family meeting, hopefully as we do this together as a church, you don't have the reaction that Megan just had about having a family meeting.
Cringe.
Again, it's not, we're not doing like family discipline here. We're just saying like, hey, there's some things about family that as a church, right, as Christians, we want to look at what the Bible says about family and kind of reclaim that from culture, because there are a lot of weird ideas about family in the current culture that are existing. So let's get into some of the things you talked about in the sermon. At one point, I thought this was just so funny the way you said this. You said a lot of people believe the idea of the nuclear family was never really true. Like it's a myth, it's a legend, right? And you said at one point, the nuclear family is not a psyop, which I thought was so funny, just that you said it that way. But like we have believed, I think a lot of people like that I talked to are like, well, that never really existed. So why are we trying to aspire to that ideal? So like, I don't know. What do you think? Why do you think that people are willing to believe that that was never really a thing, that that was all just made up? It's kind of a conspiracy, right? Like the nuclear family never existed.
I mean, I think some of that is because, and I don't want to speak for your generation, I think that some of the younger generation is susceptible to that because they haven't experienced it.
Okay.
Like when I grew up, most of my friends, nuclear families, most of my friends, mom and dad were together. They had a couple siblings. Like very rarely would you encounter like a single child.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like a one child household. And so, like divorce was, like I said, it was kind of scandalous. People were more willing to, I think, work it out just for the sake of how they'd be perceived in society. And so there was this kind of experience that people were having. And so now if I don't have that experience, when I tell you, hey, that was never the case, I think you're more willing to believe it. But like I said, I do see that in culture where I think we were talking, I have never seen this show, Bridgerton.
Oh, yeah.
But it seems to me that it is a period piece. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. But it also seems to me that it is a very diverse actor pool of people who are gay, straight, black, Hispanic. Like what? There's like all this like racial diversity, and it's supposed to take place in England by the period it looks like.
I know it's like Jane Austen times,
16,
right?
16
17,
or 17, yeah.
16th, 17th century, and it's just like I'm like, guys, and I'm going,
really?
yeah,
That wouldn't be happening.
And
Right.
again, not that, like in any way is it supposed to be some kind of like, no, it has to be white people. I'm just racist. I'm going, listen, if I filmed something in Japan but that's the thing. We have Keanu Reeves and, Tom Cruise were both in these like like The Last Ronin and
right.
The Last Samurai is Tom Cruise. And I'm like, listen to me. Like that's, and so there's all these things that you're going, yeah, if you're like, this takes place in the Congo in 900 AD, and you're just like going, it's not going to be filled with a diverse array of people.
Right.
It's going to be people who are Congolese. It's just like, it's crazy the way that we are going back and rewriting these things. And then showing people it's like really everybody's sleeping with everybody and everybody's doing this and everybody's gay and it's just like going, no, none of that ever happened. But they're trying to convince you that really it's this secret thing that went on and nobody's telling you about it. It was all just a cover up. And like, we're just trying to paste, happy faces on these families. And I think it's working to convince people of that because Why wouldn't you believe that?
Well, and why do you think we want to believe that?
It reinforces our own moral superiority.
Yeah, I think, yes, I was thinking about that. Like, I think it in some ways justifies current behaviors, right? If like this is always how people have been, then what we're doing is not so abnormal.
Yes, you're taking modern sensibilities and you're judging people at a time where those ideas had never even occurred to people.
Sure.
So we see this a lot of times in American history with, of course, the idea of slavery, where people are saying, well, Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, they're bad people because they owned slaves. And I'm going, slavery was around since the dawn of time. I mean, it's literally, happening, we'll just say at least post-flood. It's like all the time. If you conquered somebody, they became that, or you could sell yourself as an indentured servant. This was just the way the economy worked, like all over the world. And so when people have a new idea, that can really drastically improve humanity. But then you can't judge people ahead of that idea because they didn't have the idea. That's like judging people in the Old Testament on New Testament ideals when Christ hadn't come.
Right.
It's just backwards.
Sure.
And so, but if we can imply that these people knew better, if we can imply that some of those people, in this show, you can see that there actually were people that had modern sensibilities. So everybody else at that time, they were capable of having that idea. And so we can just judge them and dismiss them. And really, we're right and they're wrong. And we can really, ancient wisdom is worthless. It's just modern wisdom that really should inform ancient wisdom.
Interesting. Megan, what do you see about that? Like Lucas said, he doesn't want to speak for kind of your age group. Like, do you see this, that people in your age demographic, that they have this belief that like, oh, that was never really a real thing. So why should we aspire to that? And like having this mom, dad, couple of kids.
I think that honestly, for the most part, for me and my peers, and again, I grew up Christian with mostly a nuclear family. My oldest brother's my half brother, but for the most part, nuclear family with my parents, everything like that. All of our aunts and uncles were also, I think we had one uncle that got divorced, and I think his wife divorced him because she became homosexual. So other than that, that was like the only piece in our family that I grew up with that wasn't nuclear.
Sure.
But a lot of my friends grew up divorced parents. That was just normal. Not everybody, but quite a bit. And that's just how it was. But I think for most of us, we still aspire for the nuclear family. And I don't know if that's because I grew up that way and a lot of my friends are Christian.
Sure.
Or if that's just because everybody knows deep down, like that's what probably is going to bring the most happiness and the most wholeness. Like a lot of the movies that you see, at least, I don't know, like growing up, like I watched VHS tapes and original Disney movies, and they were all nuclear families.
Sure.
So growing up for us, at least, it was like, yeah, that's the goal. That's what we want. But nowadays, I think because it's been so distorted, because, people have broken families and now the image is like cracked a little bit, everybody almost sees like, yeah, that's what we're striving for, I guess. But like, it's so far we can't even get there. So we kind of like make our own way to get there now.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, like it's like perfection, right? Like God. I'm never gonna be like God. I can kind of try, but like honestly at this point I'm gonna be a good average person and that's okay. Like I feel like that's where our generation is at with it. So whether people are homosexual or whether people are, not actually getting married is a thing. Not even maybe for like Gen Z, like I don't know how old Gen Z is. I'm 24, but like I feel like for people that are in their 30s or like upper, they're not getting married. They're not.
Yeah.
But all me and my friends, we're all married. Like even the non-Christian friends that I have are like, yes, like I want commitment. I want covenant because we've seen like, are you guys millennials? Is that generation? But like the younger ones of you
She's a
guys?
millennial.
No, we are old millennials, yes.
Like the younger
the-
ones, like
yeah.
in their early 30s, like they're not, like everybody has like their pet animal and that's their baby. And it's like, that's not really my generation. Like,
Yeah.
I guess like the younger of us, like that's not really a vibe. We're like, no, like I want a husband, I want children, and I don't know if that's because, again, that's my bias, that's what I see, that's what mainly most of my friends are, or if it's genuinely just because we've seen I'm just going to sleep around and do whatever and it's great. And it's like, no, you can see that actually is breaking you
actually
and
not good.
sucks.
Right.
There's a weird statistic that's actually emerging with Gen Z, which is that they are the least sexed generation. They're having the least amount of sex, which is crazy. But like millennials were probably over, so but it's this emerging, it's a combination of one, internet porn, so like you can just have that and you're not actually having sex with real people,
Right.
But the other is that they are actually going, hey, this is kind of scary.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
Sure.
so it's more the millennials, the younger millennials that are on all the dating apps and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
you're actually seeing Gen Z go, hey, I don't.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. We've seen,
We see what's happening to you guys.
Yeah, yeah. And I think another statistic is that Gen Z is one of the most rising Christian church attenders since the baby boomers. Like I think it's like over, I don't know the actual statistics or percentage, but it is the most of the generation since the baby boomers that are actually attending church.
It's a weird statistic. So what the actual statistic is that right now Gen Z make up one of the largest portions of people who are church attending right now, but that's comparatively to other people. Gen Z itself it's not like a greater percentage of Gen Z is becoming church. It's that the Gen Z percentage that is coming to church is greater than the percentage of millennials
Yes.
and boomers that are coming to church.
Sure. Yeah.
So they're leading in church attendance, but we're still losing the overall battle, which is a strange way to look at it.
Well, so I think it's an interesting, again, like there's all these kind of like microcosms, right, of like patterns and trajectories. And again, we're at the top end of we're elder millennials. It's like the official name
I'm
for
an exennial.
Yeah, it's the official name for like if you were born between 1978 and 1983, you're like this micro generation. That's where we fall. And then, you know, you're in Gen Z. And again, like, it's one of my pet peeves that everybody thinks millennials are still like living at home in their parents' basements. Like, no, millennials are in their 30s and early 40s, right? Like, we're we're real adults. But yes, there is this. I remember kind of a lot of the shows. Like, so I do think media, right, shapes culture a lot,
sure.
shapes people's viewpoints. But a lot of the shows that came out when we were in our early 20s, especially, were like, your family is your friends, right? Like, we develop these friend groups that really become our family. So we don't really need family, right? Like, we rely more on, and I think that's where you see some of this, like, other types of relationships come into play, because the nuclear family was like, let's reject that. And instead, we've got this really close, like, I can think of a bunch of shows where it's like, we are family because we are in a shared experience, right? We are like, this is my people. And they call that family.
Well, the quintessential show of that was Friends.
Sure.
All of their family members are dysfunctional and cringy.
Yes.
But my friends they're the ones that are actually there for me.
They're the ones who are there for me, right?
And that really shifted away from, if you look at if you go to Nick at Night or all the older TV shows, it's always, even the Addams Family is about a family,
right?
Beverly Hillbillies,
Yeah.
Dick Van Dyke Show, you know, My Three Sons. They're all about a particular family that's, you know, Leave It to Beaver. It's about a particular family and then the other families that they interact with.
Yeah. And so at some point there became this shift, right? That it was like, oh, we want to focus less on a family unit and more on people who are in the same like peer category, age demographic, and how they become a family instead of actual genetically family.
And there's a huge shift with 90210, Melrose Place.
Oh, yeah.
These kind of shows that emerged in the 90s that, like I said, you wouldn't even show a married couple in a bed together.
Right.
On the Dick Van Dyke Show. And we thought that like Melrose Place was scandalous because like sometimes people were in swimsuits and like they were implying that there was a sex scene.
Right.
And like now it's
straight out
nudity.
there.
It's just porn.
Yeah. It's just there.
Yeah.
It's just there. So again, I do think, you know, really, I believe a lot of this shapes people's viewpoints of what is normal, right? The more I see something portrayed as normal, the more I believe it's normal. So you had a really good point, Lucas, in the sermon where you said family isn't sociology, it's theology lived out at home. So tell us about that. Like, why is this idea of family as a theological concept? Why do you think that's so important?
I think because it anchors us and grounds us.
Okay.
And there's this fundamental and ancient truth, and people are often, I think, especially here in the West, like people are beneficiaries of that, and yet they're still trying to simultaneously reject it. So like, even the way that we understand family, you and I always joke about this, that there's like these extensive chapters in Leviticus where it's like, hey, don't do this. Like, it's like, hey, don't sleep with your father's wife. She's your mother. And it's like, you're like, well, that's stupid. I'm like, no. anytime it's your father's wife. So whether it's your stepmom,
Right,
your,
right.
you know, like whatever it is, and that actually happens in the New Testament. There's a case where that happens.
Yeah.
And it's going, because you could go, well, it's not my blood relative. What's the big deal? And it's like, God's like, no, 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 no. I am defining this as your mother. And so there's a whole definitional structure that even today we adhere to, you know, like, oh yeah, you shouldn't sleep with your cousins and your siblings. And it's like, well, why is that wrong? And because for years, like, and there are some cultures where it's not, it's preserving your genetic, you know, code or what, you know, it's like whatever it is. And it's like, and we're going, no, 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 this is bad, you know? And so there's this deeper part of it, but also there's a part of it that, like I said, we're going to talk about it more through the series, but it actually teaches you about the Lord. So like, there's so many verses in the Bible where it says, like, just as your father loves you, so the Lord loves his children. You're going to be nestled in the protection of his wings, like a, you know, like a mother hen kind of a thing. And, you know, there's all these things where it's like a brother, like a sister, like a father, like a mother, you know, it's all of these things. And if you do not understand those relationships in the way that God defined them, you do
Right.
not understand God.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And
So
I,
if-
oh, no, you go ahead.
So if it's like, if I live in a, what do they call it? A polyamorous relationship where I have 6 mothers and the child is not biologically related to any of them. And where I'm like, you know, God loves you like a mother. You're like, that is so confusing.
Right.
That it's not even funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, all I was going to say is just continuing with that. And when we kind of reduce family to our own social structure, right, of whatever
Right.
we want it to be, then all of that meaning is stripped. And then we have no idea what's going on.
Exactly.
And then, like, everything becomes, like, gender is, like, you know, our own social construct of what we want it to be. And our truth is now relative. And our
Right.
identity and purpose, like, of being a wife, being a mother, being a child, all of that's, like, gone,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And then, like, nothing is anchored and we're completely disconnected from how God actually created it to be. And it's like, no wonder we're all confused and depressed. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
There are very real sociological problems that come from changing the definition, but ultimately it's a divine problem. It's a theological problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, so you said also in the sermon, right, you said that family's not a social construct, right? It is a revelation of God, which first, like, that's huge.
Yeah.
Okay, so everything that we're kind of talking about, and you hinted at this, right? All of these relationships, all of the way these things are supposed to be is because it's supposed to teach us something about the Lord. But when you said that, it just made me think about, like, oh my gosh, that's, you know, Megan, you just said there's so many things that we now say is a social construct, right? Gender is the other big one, right? For sure. If family is just a social construct, it doesn't really mean anything. Society told us this, quote unquote, right? So, like, I think that that's a big lie people believe too, is that gender is a social construct, right? So it doesn't, you hear that all the time, right? It doesn't, there's really not just 2 genders, and the society just decided that at some point. Like, no, hey, let's go back to, in the Bible, actually, like, you went back to Genesis 3 on Sunday, like, this is how God, like, why God created marriage, and he went all the way back to the beginning and what it's supposed to be. But same thing, like, gender is established in Genesis 3 also, like, literally from the beginning of human existence, this has been what it is, and we're just trying to change it, right? Like, we're just trying to make ourselves be able to, like you said, like, we need a different definition because we don't like the one that's there, right? It doesn't fit me. It doesn't work for what I want in my life. And so we're just like, meh, that's just a social construct. Are there any other ones that you guys can think of that were like, oh, that's just a social construct. We don't really need that. It doesn't really matter what you believe about that. We can redefine it in any way we want.
Having babies.
Oh,
I just think of, like, abortion.
yeah.
Of just, like, women nowadays. My Instagram reel or my feed is so sad because everything is so political and I hate it so much. But I feel like women, instead of being like, you have one hand of, like, oh my gosh, like, if I got pregnant, oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Right.
Like, I'm nervous, I'm excited, this is gonna be so great, this is a blessing this is a gift, my body's so crazy, this is awesome. And then you have other women that we're seeing that are like, oh, this is a burden. This is an illness. Like, I need to get this out of me right now.
Right.
And they are like,
It's a parasite.
yes, they're ridding themselves
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's like the social, like, this idea that, like, oh, this is something that I hate. And it's actually celebrated when I am killing
Yes.
the life inside of me
Right.
to get it out. Whereas someone is like, I just had a miscarriage and I am so torn and I cannot believe this and I want a blessing of a baby so bad. And,
Right,
like, you're
right.
holding these two in society, and it's like, how are we holding both of these things with the same thing?
I have thought that before. So, as you know, we experienced miscarriage twice, and it's like, I think the same people who were like, oh my gosh, that's so sad that you lost a baby to miscarriage, are the same. Like there are people who will say that to me, but also believe that having an abortion is not killing a human
Right.
child.
And
Right? Like
celebrate
that.
it. It's
That
crazy.
is bananas to me.
Very famously, Chrissy Teigen, who's
Yes.
married to John Legend, did that. She's a very staunch abortion activist.
Yes.
Kind of like in this shout your abortion crowd.
Right.
Like not just abortion is good, but it is a rite of passage for women. She's in that camp. And
And then she had a miscarriage.
she had a miscarriage, and she was like, John and I are grieving, and
Right.
and everybody's like going,
How do you hold both of those things, right? In the same, cannot process that.
Yep.
Right?
it's just about what I want.
Right.
And then I'm going to, and that's the thing about social structure. It's just, I want to do what I want. So I'm going to invent something that explains this away.
Right.
When I always tell, like, reality is undefeated.
Yes.
Reality is undefeated. You
Right,
can go, it's not
right.
a baby, it's not a baby, it's not a baby. And then you want the baby and you lose the baby and you're like, oh, this is so sad we lost our baby. And I'm like, reality is undefeated.
Yeah.
And so it's this crazy thing, like, and I wasn't trying to be provocative on Sunday. That kind of slipped out, but I'm talking about the wonders of, miracles of birth for women. And I'm just like, that's why you can't put a man in a dress and call him a woman, because he cannot do that thing.
You can't.
And it's just
true.
like, because it's just this, you can try to invent it, you can try and replicate it and try and copy it, but it always ends up as a cheap imitation.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was looking up statistics about this for family and marriages, and every statistic is if you grow up in with your biological parents that love you, and it's a mother and a father, all of your outcomes are better. Financially, you do better. In school, you do better. Behaviorally, you do better. And it's like, statistically, it's not even close.
Right.
And there's all these weird statistics that we were looking up about,
Yeah.
like, if you grow up, and this is, I think, not to disparage mothers in any way, because mothers are key in this process, but we were talking about that. There's a strange statistic that about kids that have disciplinary issues and go to prison, is that if you have biological parents, a mom and a dad, and you raise a kid, they are just as likely to go to prison as kids raised by a single dad. But prisons are filled with kids who are raised by single moms. And it's like going, all the verses in the Bible about how a father disciplines his child, and that's how God disciplines us. And I'm going, yes, like, we are more likely to be rebellious if we do not have a relationship with our Heavenly Father. And so it's just all these things that, the Bible has outlined 6,000 years ago. And
Right.
people are like, this is such,
This is just a social construct.
And
We
yet-
don't really need this.
everywhere it is practiced, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And then people say, well, that's because society is based on a two-parent household, and if we just get rid of this expectation in society, then kids will have better outcomes. And we've basically done that.
Right.
We have told everybody that you can, that there's no benefit to staying married. You should just get out, you should get remarried, have, be in a throuple, have lovers, like, do whatever, and that will have no,
Impact, yeah.
impact. And every time, and that's why I sit with people who are like, I'm thinking about getting divorced. I'm like, you are going to blow up the planet that your child lives on. Mm-hmm. Like, they'll never get over this in a sense of, there's always going to be court appearances, and there's going to be 2 different Christmases, and it's a very serious thing to do, not just for yourself, but for your family.
Well, and I think you made a good point on Sunday when you were talking about, right, the goal of talking about how God established family and things like, gender, and, that I think Trudy's probably going to talk on Sunday about womanhood and something to that effect. It will be Mother's Day. I know we're planning to talk about marriage. Jake and Ryan are planning to talk about, children and parenting and some of that stuff in a couple of weeks. And so, like, the point of this series is, again, not to heap condemnation on you if you are not, like, perfectly aligned here, right? Like, that's
Because
absolutely
not even Abraham was.
right. Like, that's
Exactly.
absolutely not what we're doing. And you even made the point, like, we have a blended family, right? Because we are raising someone else's children, right? Like,
And when you're in the foster care process, it's very much like going through divorce. You have to go to court appearances. And
there's a
hearings
lot
and-
there. And so, like, all of that is not to say that family is easy, right? Or that if you have, quote unquote, messed it up in some way, that you are in condemnation. That is not the point. And you made the point on Sunday, like, this is where I was going with this, is that, like, sometimes we just adjust the rules because we don't want to feel judged, right? People don't want to, oh, I missed the mark and now I'm being judged. And so like, I'll just excuse this, or I'll just say, oh, well, that's an unattainable standard or whatever. And so again, none of that is what we're trying to do here, right? But just to say like, hey, listen, God actually outlined this in a certain way for a reason, right? Like it's supposed to be this way. And we know that this is a broken earth. And so it's not going to always be that way. Like Adam and Eve, for Pete's sake, right? Like their family, super dysfunctional.
The kids killed each other.
Yeah, murders. Yes. One of their sons kills their other son. If you haven't read Genesis, it's wild times. It's the Wild West. And so, Genesis is crazy. But like, again, not to heap condemnation on anyone listening, right, to this whole series, to be like, oh, I failed, and so now I can't ever get back on track.
Well, and I don't think that anybody goes into that expecting that. Like
Sure.
some people, hey, you're going to grow up in a broken household. It's not even your fault as a child. But, I thought of it the other day. This is a very imperfect analogy, but I'm going to go with it anyway.
Oh, good.
So, like, at home, we own firearms. Now,
You own firearms.
I own firearms.
I
And
do not.
in no way am I seeking out to use that on a human being,
Sure.
right?
Right.
Like, that would be awful.
Yes.
But if someone breaks into my house and it's between, them hurting our children and me stopping them, I'm probably going to choose that. Mm-hmm. And so, that's just an imperfect, like I'm put in an imperfect situation and I'm going to try and do what I can to protect myself. And so I understand that people, they encounter divorce and maybe their spouse divorces them.
Right.
They're cheating.
Right.
They're, super addicted to maybe some very unhealthy drugs and they're putting their family in unhealthy situations. There's all kinds of situations that you find yourself in, and you're going to try and do the best thing that you can. And if it doesn't work out, then what you're going to do is you're going to follow the word, and then you're going to pour grace on it, and then you're going to try again. But again, when you try again, you should again attain those standards.
Yeah.
Because no one should go into a marriage going, I'd be here about 5-6 years and get a divorce.
Let's just see how this works out.
Right. Because
Right.
it is so painful.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing, is that people are like, are you judging me? I'm like, no. Was that painful? Oh yeah, it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I'm like, yes, I don't want that to happen to you again. And I don't
Exactly.
want it to happen to your kids. It
Yeah.
shouldn't happen to anybody.
Right.
And so you should take it really seriously before you make that commitment. And then once you're in the commitment, like that should be
Yeah.
the thing. And we've created a social structure that excuses that. Like when we did no fault divorce,
Right.
you don't even have to have a reason.
Exactly.
And so
And I think that goes back to what you were talking about. Like that became a really big thing in our age demographic, right? That like
we were like, you mean you could just
people got divorced like crazy. I think just above us, and like so in the like if you're in your 40s and early 50s, like I think we saw that a lot. That started happening a lot. You didn't really need a reason, just I'm unhappy and I will get divorced, right? And so like you're saying, Megan, is your generation watched that?
Yep.
And they were like, ooh.
Nope.
Ooh. So I do think there's something to there. And like you're saying, you kind of have this, your peer group specifically is a little more religious background, right? Like you have some morals based on religions. I teach at a community college and I see like my students are coming through and they are like, yeah, I don't actually want any of it. I don't want kids. I don't want to get married. Some of them are in like relationships, but not all. Like they're just very self-focused all the time. And so it's a really interesting just like to watch culturally what is happening in different like you said a couple weeks ago, who you're around is what you become, what becomes normal to you. And so like they're in all these contexts that it's like if you have no religion, you have no morals, you have no, like it's just you. I do what feels right to me, right? And so that's like, I mean, again, biblically, we see that the Israelites did that for a while. It's the book of Judges, right?
Look how that turned out.
Everyone
Everyone
did what felt right in his own eyes. Like that's okay. So, you
God
know,
was like, send in He-Man.
yeah, and God was like, all right, well, let's see how this works out. So that kind of leads to, you talked a little bit on Sunday about the idea of deconstructionism, and I don't want to spend like all the time here. We could. I know we could, but like the idea of deconstructionism, so like not just like why is that happening, right? Because I think we've kind of already talked about why is it happening. We want to undo or unravel or excuse or whatever, right? We want to, the systemic, right? You use that word, the system is bad, the system is flawed, and so I want to wholesale reject the system, right? So not just why are we deconstructing, but like how are people doing that, and what is the effect that is really having, especially when we think about going down the chain, right? Not just Megan's generation, but like our little girls. Gen Alpha is the generation coming up after you guys. Like the effects of deconstructing now, people who are deconstructing now, what does that do for the future? What are your thoughts on that?
Oof, that's a big question. Well, first of all, I see people like when you're asking how are they doing it, I think it's whenever you reach an adolescent stage of understanding in a certain topic.
Okay. So can you define what you mean by an adolescent stage?
Sure. So like, let's take religion, for example.
Sure.
Okay. So we see a lot of people that come to Christ at our church, right? And then your adolescent stage is teenagers. You think that you know everything and you really don't. You know more than you did.
Right.
But you reach a point where you feel like I've got a handle on this and you don't.
Yeah.
And
you don't know how much you don't know. Like that's with teenagers.
right, but you know enough to be
Yes,
dangerous. And you can, like you know enough that you can drive.
Yeah. Oh boy.
And so people come and they're all usually very humble. They say, "Oh my gosh, I don't know anything about Jesus Christ." And you start to teach them a little bit about Jesus Christ. And then they're like, and then as soon as they reach a level that they can look down.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's like teenagers, they can look at 10-year-olds and go, pff, right?
Yeah.
And so as soon as they reach
You
a
don't
level
know
of that,
anything.
of new Christians and new believers, they go, "Oh my gosh, I should be leading a ministry. Oh my gosh, like everyone should listen to me. Oh my gosh,
Yep.
like I just know all this stuff. And did you know, like I saw this on this latest podcast," and you're like, like,
Yeah, calm down.
yeah, like, and so there's a lot of things that it leads into, and people who are more mature in the faith are going, "Whoa, slow down," and they're like,
Right.
and then it becomes you're trying to hold me back.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I think that this is true, and I don't have any statistics to back this. This is anecdotal. A lot of the people that come to know Christ in our church don't stay.
Okay.
They come to know Christ in our church. They reach that adolescent stage. They get some kind of church hurt. They get to the, "You're not my real dad" phase, and they leave.
Sure.
And they go find a different church that has not grown up with them.
Okay.
And so they kind of restart that process. Just like teenagers, they don't want to listen to their parents.
Right.
They want to go find some other random adult and
Yeah.
listen to them.
Maybe.
And so, yeah. But now people can do that on the internet.
Yes.
And
True.
so they would rather listen to somebody on the internet that doesn't have any accountability in their life.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
good.
so they reach that stage, and a lot of times then at that stage of adolescence, they will either move to a different church and then grow up kind of in that church as well and listen to that. And then sometimes in each phase they'll switch churches. But what also can happen in that is, so teenagers, they start to ask the question, why? Why?
Right.
Why?
Right.
And if they don't like the answer, if it's just like, this is the way it's been done for years and years and years and years, they think that they're like, well, I have a newfangled way of doing this.
Yeah.
And then that usually creates a lot of hurt, because the churches are going to go, no, we've tried that 15 times before, it does not work, and they're going to go, you don't understand, if we, real Calvinism has never been tried, whatever it's going to be, real youth ministry has never been tried. And so, it's like, okay, and like Megan will attest to this. This is why a lot of times, like, people on staff or Megan will come to me and go, "I've got this new idea." I'm like, "Go for it." And like, I know that it's going to end badly, but I'm like, better you figure it out than if you look at me and I try and crush your dreams.
Sure.
And then it's like, Lucas won't let me do this. I'm like, no, go ahead. Like, go ahead and try it. And maybe you'll succeed at it, where everybody else failed, but a lot of times you don't. And then I'm just like, that's okay. You tried your best. Now let's do it this way.
Sure.
So it's, there's just, it's a lot that's happening, but people then, once they start to ask those why questions, they start to deconstruct. And then if they get too far down the rabbit hole, then they just give up.
And so mainly you're saying people start to deconstruct because they don't like the answer behind the why.
Yeah, or they don't accept it. And like I said, they have this, they have enough knowledge to understand the problem necessarily, but not enough wisdom to recognize what has come before.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when you start down that path, it becomes very difficult to kind of pull out of that cycle unless you have unless you value wisdom,
Right.
and not just knowledge.
That's good. That's a good distinction. Megan, what do you think?
I think, kind of in the same vein, people are just looking for answers.
Okay.
Of like, why do I feel this way? Why am I struggling with this? Why is this happening to me? Why, you know, why, whatever. And so everyone, just the human experience is to find truth, right? Find real truth. And nowadays I feel like it's just find your truth, which is relative, which is a whole other thing, right? But I feel like nowadays, instead of just trying to find the misinterpretations, we're just trying to find the truth itself. Like, in the sense of like, we're not actually looking for the real cold hard answer. We're looking for what we want.
Yeah.
And so we're not just, again, looking for, oh, this is misinterpreted. Okay, yeah, that's the truth. We're just looking for, oh, okay, like, this is my truth, right? That kind of a thing. And so I feel like when that happens, that just completely disconnects us from God in general. And then kind of what we talked about, like, everything else from there is just completely broken. Or, like, at least it's distorted, right? It's not how God created it to be.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we're just redefining everything about ourselves. And everything just kind of... Not that it's terrible and sucks or whatever, but it's not as good as God wanted it for us.
Yeah.
You know? And so, like, with divorce or, like, you know, gender, like, we kind of talked about all of it, but it just hurts my heart a lot. And not that if you're in those places, you know, you're stuck or it's never going to be good, but God created something for a reason in the way that it was supposed to be created for us to have that full, abundant life.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, not that God isn't redeeming, but that is what we should be striving for, you know?
And a combination of what
good.
you just said and what you just said before is happening where, you, like you said, you come in with a presupposition, right? Of, I think that I am this way. And so therefore society is wrong and we need to change society. And then we change society and I get to go further into that thing and I am more miserable.
Yes.
Like you were talking about how people become more and more discontent like, with what's happening. And it's like, oh... And I'll just use this as an example because I've talked with people about this before in this situation where I just said, like, listen, you know, you are in this situation where you're going, you know, you are a woman and every guy that you date, you are not achieving a super high level of intimacy.
Yeah.
And I'm going, because guys are idiots. Like we're, you know.
Men have a hard time with intimacy.
Right. And it's a lifelong process for men.
Right.
And so you're at this level where you're, you know, you have a best friend who's a girl that your intimacy with them is much higher because you've been roommates. You like women do intimacy well and it's easier.
Right.
And so you go, oh, well, this relation, I must be gay.
Because this feels better.
This feels better. And I've been taught by society that my best friend is supposed to be my spouse.
Yep.
Which those are two different relationships. And that's my pet peeve. But
This is the one of Lucas's soapbox.
I really do believe that that one of the lies of homosexuality start with my spouse is supposed to be my best friend, because then you have a best friend that's the same sex and you go, well, there it is, they're supposed to be my spouse.
Yep.
And so then they decide to make this relationship sexual. And I've told somebody that was in that situation, I said, listen, Carissa and I, when we got married, probably had a less, you know, how would you say that, like physically or less mentally intimate, emotionally intimate relationship that you do with your best friend now. But our growth process is exponential. And I looked at that person and I said, you will never have a child with that person and say they have your smile in my eyes. That's there's a cap to your level of intimacy.
Right.
And it's like, and it cannot grow beyond a certain point. And so they go, no, we're going to do this. We're going to, you know, have an alternative family. And where I'm like, okay. And I think that they get into that situation and they start to feel that rub. They start to feel that uncomfortableness. And they start to look at society and go, well, here's this heterosexual couple that has this thing. And it starts to really, really get under their skin. And then it's like, well, this is because society sucks. And it's like, we have to change society because if society was changed, I wouldn't feel this way. And it's like, and that's the thing that people are going through with trans ideology and stuff. Well, the only reason that trans people are suicidal is because society rejects them. I'm like, no, they are suicidal because they are mentally ill.
Right.
Yes.
And they like that. If you look at the statistics, once you have any kind of surgery, your suicide rates go through the roof.
Yep. Right.
But what they do is they say like like your kid, you can have a dead son, or, you know, like, they're going to commit suicide if you don't do this. And that's not actually the statistics.
Yeah.
And so you have this thing where it just becomes more and more and more uncomfortable, and we need to change society more and more and more and more. And the more that we change it, the more that we're unhappy and we're depressed and we're anxious and we have all of these mental illnesses that, you know, weren't really prevalent in society pre-sexual revolution. And people are like, we don't know where this is coming from. And you're like, of course you do. It's because people aren't growing up in happy homes.
Yeah.
And they're not growing up in healthy families.
Yeah.
And you know, you can look at all the statistics about kids that grow up in homosexual households. They have higher depression, higher anxiety, lower outcomes. You can look at all of those things, and people are just saying, no, I just want to seek out the truth that I want it to be.
Yeah.
And so I'll only look at that data. I'll only look at these outcomes.
Yeah.
And if the outcomes aren't what I expect them to be, then we have to change society, not change myself.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we want to. I think there's a big tendency for people to accept what fits their own narrative. Like you were saying, what's my truth and what fits with my truth is what I will accept.
Yeah.
Right.
So that is
And yet reality is undefeated.
right. And so that's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's dangerous because, again, like what we're looking at is, again, part of this series is like, what is the, like, there are all these narratives about family
Yeah.
that it can be whatever you want, and you can make your own family, right? Like you can do that however you want to do it, whether it's through friends, whether it's through, you know, homosexual relationships, whether it's through, you know, like whatever it is, there's all these ways you can build a family.
Yeah.
And yet God said, here's how family is supposed to look, right? Like here's how I did, like you said, Megan, I designed it to be a certain way. And so to get the most out of it, like that's the goal, right? Is to be inside of that framework.
Yeah.
So
It's like, we're
no.
just gonna.
He talked a lot.
I talked a lot.
Literally, all I was gonna say is just the idea that when you remove God's design, we don't get freedom; we actually get fragmentation.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like just the idea that
I'm going to write that down.
that's literally what I don't know. It's just the sum up of what we were talking about. That's
Right.
just what was going through my head.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I think that's really true.
So
That's really true. Yeah. And you touched on something I have a big soapbox about. I really think feminism ruined women. You know, like you touched on that, like the sexual revolution and the rise of feminism and all of that. Again, like we said, gender is a social construct. So here's now how we define women. That's
right, and it's not even for women anymore.
Exactly.
And I'm like, I'm a
Right.
woman, and I can't even. This isn't even for me. This is for some guy
Crazy.
who wants to be like
It's
me, but
crazy.
I can't.
All the women of the year are really men.
Yes, I'm like,
And
we're
that is-
ruining femininity. Like,
And it's
We're
like,
just better at it than
no,
you are.
and like that's I get this is something I have a really hard. I struggle with it. Like this is really hard for me because I find that super offensive. If a man says he
Yes.
is a woman, like you said, men literally cannot give birth. You can't. You cannot grow a human. And I know
You're
for
cosplaying.
women this is also touchy. I understand like there are women who it doesn't make you less of a woman if you can't have
Right.
a child, right? I understand there are infertility issues that happen in the world and like that's not your fault and whatever.
different thing, yeah.
But like biologically, your body has the equipment to do that, right? And male bodies don't. And like we need like that just infuriates me, right? When men are like, well, we're women, we can just be women. You know, this is it's a deconstruction to such a degree that it has now made the actual word meaningless.
Yep.
Yeah, and you and I talked about that. It's equating two things. One, because they're like, oh, it's gender is not sex, and I'm like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Gender is, you know, it's about language.
Yes,
You know, and it's
Yeah.
like it's a linguistic term.
absolutely.
But so what they're equating with is social stereotypes.
Yes.
So if I'm a girl, I like dolls, and if I'm a boy, I like trucks.
Right.
And so if a girl likes trucks, we go, her gender. And I'm like, no, her gender isn't different. She just likes trucks.
She has different preferences.
She's a tomboy.
Yeah, she likes different things, and that's okay.
Yeah, and it's like going, you know, there are plenty of people that like different things. There are like Danica Patrick was, you know, in NASCAR for years, and it's
Right.
just like, so who cares? And like that's the whole thing where it's like, because there's an exception to the rule, that doesn't necessarily mean you throw out the rule.
Right.
You just accept that and have good grace for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they're doing is they're saying, well, this propensity for things that are socially effeminate, that changes
Right.
the essence of who you are, and so then you're disconnecting sex and gender, but then you're re-equating them, because if you go, well, this girl likes trucks, therefore she's a boy, and I'm like going, well, now they're separating gender and biological sex, but then reattaching it,
Right.
where it's like, well, you
Sure.
have to go have surgery and do
Because
this.
then also, if you are a boy who doesn't like trucks, does that make you a girl? Right? Like,
Right.
I mean, it's just like it breaks down, you know.
I always say, I knew this guy that he worked with my mom, that dude like had a manicure on his toes all the time, and like he was probably one of the more effeminate guys. He talked with a lisp.
He did.
If you met him, you would go, oh, this is like a stereotypical person that would be on like Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. I mean, like he would be somebody in Hollywood that you would go, this guy's gay, and he had a beautiful wife, 2 kids, you know, like
Yep.
heterosexual as can be, and it's just like, because he doesn't buy into that narrative.
Sure.
And so it's a false equivalency that happens.
Yeah.
But I think mostly you're seeing that happen, and we talk about that through religion and what's happening now in politics, is it's basically just saying, I don't like the system because I'm unhappy in the system, and I
Right.
think it's unfair to me,
Right.
and I can't take personal responsibility for that, so the thing has to be readjusted.
Yeah.
And so people do that with their faith as well, is that, you know, they're like going, well, I don't like that the Bible says this, therefore I'm going to make the Bible not say that by deconstructing something
Right.
and finding this giant loophole.
Yeah.
And then once you've made the Bible not say what the Bible says, you go, well, really, this is kind of worthless.
Yeah.
And you walk away from it.
Exactly.
And because it creates, the further in that you go away from it, the more unhappy that you are.
Right.
Which then convinces you that you have to change more and more of it.
Right.
Until you just don't have anything.
Right. So kind of wrapping up, there's obviously, I told you we could talk about this for a long time.
Yeah.
Our daughter is trying to text us incessantly, and
Yeah.
I keep ignoring her. But Lucas, you said changing the way we, and I'm paraphrasing, but changing the way we see family, right, changes the way we see God. So your point was a lot of times people have a hard time with the idea of God as a father if they've had a bad father relationship, a bad father example. And I think that's true of a lot. Like you said, we don't know what the word brother truly means if we've had a bad sibling experience, right? Like all these human relationships, we transpose those onto God, right? Like we say, oh, well, because it's like this with this person, it must be the same with God. But you said, it, you know, again, if we change the way we view family, it will change the way we see God. And so if our views of God are largely, you know, shaped by these family experiences, like what does that challenge us to do differently, do you think, in our everyday lives?
I mean, I think that's a very large and intimidating thing. So, like, we were talking about this a little bit, but the idea is kind of like going, we had this incident, you and I were reminiscing about this. I was like, oh, I remember a couple of times when we were still fostering. I don't know if we had adopted yet. But one of our children, you kind of have limited discipline options, especially when you're fostering. And so it's just like you can give them timeouts, you can give them you can ground them from privileges. And so one of our kids was just in a spiral. It had gone on for days where it's just like, hey, are you ready to kind of rejoin the family and do this? No. And I'm like, okay. And it got to the point where I'm like going, she can't get out of this. Mm-hmm. Like she herself cannot find a way to pull up.
Right.
And so it's just, the plane is careening down. And so I was like, I'm going to have to do this for her. And so it was a terrible moment because I'm like, I don't want to be permissive in this. I don't want her to think if she just waits me out that she gets her way. And yet I had to sit her down and we were like, I tried as best to explain to her, I'm like, you seem incapable of getting out of this. And so I'm going to apply what I call grace. And I, just told her about grace. And I said, so you're going to take a breath and we're going to start over. And it really snapped her out of it. And so that was a thing where I'm going, okay, how do I be God to her in this situation? How do I be the father to her and show her love? Because God doesn't let me spiral and spirals, but like,
well, and
he
I
gives
think,
me grace.
and part of that was I do feel like she was little at the time. I mean, very young, but like I still think she was ultimately waiting for the consequence, right? Like she's waiting to see, what are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? What's going to happen to me if I keep acting like this? Like she's waiting to see. And I think we put that idea on God. Like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do, God? What are you going to do to us? Right? Like we're waiting to see, like, what's the worst that's going to happen, right? How far can we push this? And God's up there going, oh, I want to give you grace.
Well,
I want to give you that to you.
Yeah, and the narrative that she was telling herself was, I was mean.
Yeah.
My life is bad because, my foster mom and dad are mean to me.
Right.
I'm like, no, your life is bad because you're rebellious. And so...
I mean, saying that to like a 6-year-old is kind of intense, but...
Right, but it's like, you are making bad decisions, and this is why this is happening. And if you just make different decisions, we wouldn't be doing this. And so, but that's the challenge is how do I win this fight? Like, how do I spank my kid because I'm angry at them? Or it's just, what would Jesus do?
Get your bracelet.
Yeah. How do I convey, like, you read that verse, like, fathers shouldn't exasperate their children. And it's like going, okay, so if she's in a spiral, I can either up the ante and yell at her, or I can de-escalate her.
Right.
So
how do you feel like that helps? How How does that help shift maybe your view of God and her view of God in a situation like that?
I'm hoping it shifts her view of God, that we're equating the two. That when someone else later on says father, that's what she'll equate it to, rather than her own biological father. But and with our girls, I think we have great relationship. You know, I come in at night and sing to them to put them to bed, and you know, do those things. And it's like I want them to think that that's what God does. You know, you can read Zephaniah where it says that He comes and sings over us. You know, it's like that's the picture. But like for me, it's always a challenge, like we've talked about before, where like sometimes I'm just into martyrdom, but like I think a lot of guys they're like, I sacrifice for this family, and I'm going, yeah, that's your job. Like,
Yep.
that's my thing. I'm always like, oh, you know, I sacrificed this, you know, and it's
I
like
never get the pizza that I want.
I never get the pizza toppings that I want. I just do it for you and the kids. And it's just like, well, that's your job. You know, like, congratulations. You know, shut up. You know, like,
Guys, this was a real fight that we had.
oh my gosh,
multiple
for years.
times in our relationship.
But it is like, I think for guys, sometimes we're quick to sacrifice, but slow to say anything about it if we're starting to feel
Sure.
bitter about it.
Sure.
And then it's like, you know, and like I said, I sit with all these guys all the time. They're like, you don't understand this, and I'm going, yeah, you're supposed to love sacrificially. So buck up, buttercup.
Right.
You know, like,
right.
you know, go to the Lord for your strength. You know, so it should change the way that you parent and the way that you are a husband, and you know, all of those things.
All of the things. Megan, what do you think?
Okay, I have two things, kind of rapid fire, kind of a sum of what you just said, I guess, but maybe a little bit more practical, more application.
You
But
saying I'm impractical?
no, but you are a great way of
You
talking.
have been
and
extrapolating
yeah.
for quite a long time.
So I'm just gonna
She's gonna narrow it down, is what she's saying.
just a little bit.
Gosh.
But we talked about, like you said, when experiences aren't the best, that don't, like, when humans don't reflect God well as parents or children or whatever, it's hard for us to understand God.
Yeah.
But I think we need to let God define family for us and not our experiences, right? And so we kind of
Yeah.
talked about that, but like,
Yeah.
we shouldn't be interpreting God through our family. We should be interpreting our family through God. And so kind of switching our mindset on that, and just having that always be our, like, okay, I'm going to God, I'm going to God, I'm going to God. What does God say
That's
about
good.
this? What does God look like? And that is what I'm going to pull out of, not what did my dad look like? That's
Right.
what God is. What does God look like? That's what my dad should have been. And like you said, having grace for that.
Sure.
So I think just that small, simple mindset, not even just with families, but throughout our lives, I think that'll help us a lot with the hurt and the hangups and the bitterness.
Sure.
And then kind of what you were just talking about too, literally just becoming people who actually reflect God's design, right? The Imago Dei, the image of God, like being that, because we're discipling people whether we believe it or not, or we understand it or not, right? Everything that we think, say, and do has an effect not only on ourselves, but how people view us and how people view God and Christianity as a whole.
Sure.
And like, that's a really big deal.
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of us forget about that, just being Christians.
Yeah.
Especially if you say you're a Christian, or if you're a pastor, or you're in leadership, or X, Y, and Z, you are looked upon as that. And so you
Right.
just have a higher calling, a higher responsibility to actually hold that image up.
Yeah.
Which is a blessing, but it can be really difficult. So just
Sure.
being mindful of that and trying to hold that dear to your heart
Yeah.
wherever you're at all the time, no matter what. So.
Well, and I think too, like, you know, I know you don't have children yet, but you are leading a lot of young people in our youth ministry, and you've been doing that for a long time. And I think that there's something really important there about, you know, maybe not just the concept of family, but like, how do you teach younger people, hey, here's what actual love looks like, right? Like biblically. And it's not like, I know, you know, again, it's hard with teenagers as a youth leader to be like, oh, like I want to support them and I don't want to drive them away from God and I want to be there for them. But like, also there's sometimes you have to say hard things,
Yep.
right? Like, hey, this is not what God wants for you. Like you're saying, this is not God's best for you. You know, if you have a secret sin in your life, you have to come clean about it. And that is me loving you, right? Like that accountability is how I'm loving you and not just letting you get away with all these things. Because that's part of the reason why teenagers don't love their parents, right? Is
Accountability.
most parents are trying to hold their kids accountable to say, hey, there's consequences if you do this thing that we've told you not to do. And teenagers want to reject that. And so to be like, no, like, that is actually loving for me to be like, hey, let me not let you sit in that, right? Like, let me encourage you to come out of that. Let's talk about how we deal with that. Let's talk about, not being rebellious, not living in sin, like all these things. And I know you do that as a youth leader. And so again, like, I think we all have, like you're saying, as Christians, kind of this responsibility to think about how does God want us to reflect him, right? In all of our relationships, not just family, right? But that we are helping, God holds us accountable, right? Like God says, hey, this is what I set up for you, and here's how it's going to work the best, and here's how I created you to be. And that we go in our relationships, all of them, and we're like, hey, how do I reflect God in this? How do I make sure that I'm, protecting his view and his image?
Well, when you do that, you're protecting truth.
Yeah.
You're protecting reality. Because it's, like I said, even when you do that, if you're going, oh, I'm a youth leader, and so my role is kind of like your uncle or your aunt, it's like
The fun aunt.
Yeah, but even in Christianity, if I say, oh, I'm your brother in Christ, if there is not a universal understanding and standard about what a brother does,
Right.
that can mean anything.
Exactly.
And so, like I said, that I just think that that's the thing. We're losing those definitions because we're trying to, kind of create a false equivalency between something else, and it doesn't uphold truth.
Well, I think we're trying not to hurt people's feelings.
Oh yeah.
A lot of the time we're trying to, I don't want you to turn away from God because of something I say. We're so concerned with that we're afraid to speak truth.
Well, yeah, and people pleasing, and like a lot of, for the youth group specifically, the leaders are like being cool, being liked, and it's
I want
like,
them to like me.
No, they will like you if you are respectable and you uphold them and keep them accountable.
Right.
Not if you're just this cool, like you do whatever you want. Like nobody likes that person. Nobody respects that person or looks up to them.
Parents especially don't like that youth leader. I'm gonna tell you right now.
Well, and again, as we're ending this, I just want to pour grace on everybody of going, the thing that we're trying to uphold is the actual definition and standard of not, if you get divorced, you're like, I'm like, oh man, that sucks. That's terrible.
Yeah.
That's why it hurts, because it hurts.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's like, okay, well, when we get remarried, I'm like, okay, now when you get remarried, like it shouldn't be, for better or worse, or, like until I don't really like this, like it should be until death do us part. Like that should be what you're striving for. In the same way that if God says, hey, tell the truth and don't lie, we can go, you know what, I lied and I messed it up. I'm going to come out and tell the truth, and we're going to pour grace on it and move forward.
Right.
And I understand what truth is, rather than going, what is truth?
Well, or rather than giving yourself, like, then it becomes a permission structure of, oh, I did this once, so I might as well just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I think sometimes we go that way too. Geez, sounds like we could just sit here and talk all day, but we're going to wrap up. So,
Make sure you come tell Megan that you listen to the podcast.
and please join us for the rest of this series, for the rest of the month of May. It's going to be a great one. We hope to hear from you. We hope you get some good insights on what God really meant when he set up family. So please come back and join us for this family meeting that we are having for the rest of the month of May. Thanks, guys. Good discussion today. And thanks to our viewers. We'll see you next time on the 167.
If you enjoyed this episode of the 167, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, get notified, leave a 5-star rating and a positive review. Tell all your friends to listen as well. Make sure you go over to newlifegardener.com and check out all that we have to offer as a church, and check out our messages online as well. Thanks for listening.